Hey, dads, do you ever feel like you're juggling too many balls and the one labeled dad keeps slipping through your fingers? Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of five, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. Hey, dads, do you ever feel like you're juggling too many balls and the one labeled dad keeps slipping through your fingers? You're not alone. Every father wrestles with the tension between work, family, and personal time. But what if balance isn't about doing it all? It's about choosing what really matters. Welcome. It's Ed Gow Jr. here from the Dad Central Show, and this time he's clean shaven.
True song of Dad Central and the Dad
Good. What's
Central
going on, Drew?
podcast. This is like so timely because I just finished a 2 week my ideal schedule, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But because there feels like there's so much going on. I just also sent an email to my parents who are wonderful sports, basically saying, "Hey, here's our fall schedule." And I had to list all the kids, their activities, when they were, where they were, what time. And you're like, man, this is a lot of stuff. You gotta be organized to be able to balance it all, or to at least manage it all. So, anyways, this is I think a timely conversation.
Excellent. Like today, we're going to be talking about fatherhood and balance, and we're going to talk about the challenge of balancing fatherhood with other responsibilities. And we're going to set the scene. We're going to go 3 pillars of balance, and we're going to have some real life strategies and insights. So before we kick it off, Drew, you gave a little story. Is balancing fatherhood challenging for you?
Well, I've maintained for years now that balance is actually a losing game. It's the wrong way to look at the realities of fatherhood or parenting, in that you know it, things in life are constantly changing, and you are constantly having to adapt to them. And the more that you think, I've got to have things in balance. Think of this idea of these spinning plates, and you got to keep them all, or even this typical scale, right? If it's not perfectly balanced, you're off balance, and then you're like, well, things aren't right. I got to get it back to balance. I think that causes a losing mentality. When you focus on, it's actually, think of it more of like a circle or a wheel or a pie, whatever you say, and you've got different areas of life that they all need to be integrated into the whole. When you approach it that way, say, okay, well, I can work with it because at certain points in times, parts of the whole might get bigger, such as work commitments and demands might be a difficult period of time for a few months. And guess what? That doesn't mean you're out of balance. It just means you have to reshift things around in that whole to be able to manage that period of time. And so I think the idea of how do you integrate all the different aspects and the demands of your life is a much healthier, more holistic approach to being successful in this challenge of how do you maintain balancing all the different demands and responsibilities. So that's more my approach. And I think we'll talk more about it, but we'll also address the real challenges, I think, that come up.
Then as we set into it, let's start with our first talking point, setting the scene. Why do you feel balance is such a struggle for dads today?
I mean, from my perspective, there's a lot of demands. There's a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty, right? If I reflect back on early days, so I started out with twins, and so at the time, I was trying to grow my career. I was really wanting to pursue more leadership opportunities, but I also then had 2 children at home, not just one, and I had a wife who owned a business and was trying to grow and build her business. And so, then we also had family, we had friends, we had our health, we had, just the realities of things that you got a lot going on in life. And so my experience, I'm sure, isn't unique. And there are many dads or families who have even more on their plate than what we would have had at that point in time. And so I think just the reality is Life is busy. There's a lot going on. There's family. There's cultural expectations. There's our own internal, maybe even subconscious beliefs and attitudes that are contributing to some of the challenges. So there's a lot happening. And truthfully, I don't pay attention to the news intentionally, but if you are a person who is constantly in the news, there's enough to stress you out just there. Thinking about the world and the economy and the challenges and the tariffs and the discord and the uncertainty, like that in itself only adds to layers of pressures or stressors that I believe make it such a struggle for dads today, let alone the long held belief that dads are the providers, and we hold and take that in a good way, but sometimes it becomes becomes more of a burden and a significant stressor as opposed to a positive thing. So those are just some of my thoughts, Ed, but I'm sure you've worked with dads for years and years and years. So what can you add to that?
I'll add two other things on top of the great things you shared. First, well, one you already mentioned, uncertainty. More and more things these days are uncertain. I was speaking with a former intern that worked with me a few years ago, and we caught up, and her dad just lost his job, and he is devastated. And it's an interesting situation because her father and mother are separated, but they're still involved in the co-parenting of this lady and her son, and it's just been very challenging. And basically, she's been like a mother to him because he is just devastated. I know he's worried about taking care of his kids, etc. And another dynamic that I've seen growing over the last few years is fathers not only have to taking care of themselves, taking care of their families, but sometimes having to get involved in taking care of his parents. That is a whole other dynamic that I've seen growing over the last few years because our parents are living longer, thanks be to great medical and genes, whatever. But that's another circumstance, especially if your parents are aging and that whole dynamic. Can they survive on their own? Do you have to put them in a nursing home? That's a whole other conversation. I think we could take another standalone topic, fathers taking care of their parents. That can definitely, and again, it's something that's a lot of times we're not prepared for it, let alone prepared with being a partner, let alone being prepared for raising kids. Then, oh, wow, I got to take care of my mom and dad. I have no experience at doing that. So that just puts a whole other dynamic in trying to walk through life at somewhat a good pace.
Yeah. Now that we've stressed each other out, just sharing those load of stressors, let's shift the focus.
Yeah, no problem. So let's next talk about three pillars in trying to maintain a lifestyle that is not so rocky. So, Drew, we got three P's. Go for it.
Yeah, three P's. So first P is presence. The second P is provision. And the third P is personal well-being. Let's take some time and talk about each of these. And so the way that I would look at this is I think that if you can, as these three ideas, these three pillars, and keep them front and center, then you have the ability to help this process of what I call integration of each of these three pillars into your schedule and into your life. And so presence is really, are you being intentional with your family time and intentionally fully engaging, being there? So, we've all talked or heard the stories of, dad who's there, but isn't there. Right. So, if you are there, then be present in terms of full attention, full engagement. If you are constantly having your mind elsewhere, it's pretty obvious to those who are around you. So presence, being very intentional when it is time for, and this is true of anything. You're at work, be intentional with focusing on work. When you're at the gym, be intentional and focusing on taking care of yourself. When you're at home, be intentional in keeping your presence where you are. You want to talk about provision, Ed, or add anything to that one?
No, I think it's always important about having the presence and I agree that intentionality, being consistent for many people. Well, right now we're in the beginning of when I'm recording this, we're in the beginning of a new school year. How how are you as a dad or male caregiver or provider? How are you going to have that presence? And that the age old thing we say is that it's not how much time you spend with your child or children, it's what do you do during that time and make it consistent because a lot of times our children are looking forward to that time. And if you can be consistent with it, it not only improves their growing up, it improves you, it improves the parent, it improves the family dynamic that it's consistent and intentional. So that's what I'll just add for that.
Okay. Yeah, so provision. This is the idea of being able to meet both your work, your financial, or if you're, at not working, meeting the responsibilities that you have because maybe you're providing childcare or maybe you're actually, fully a stay-at-home dad and engaging with the child, you're providing the children with what they need. And so without being consumed by them, right? So that's, I think, the important piece is can you meet those responsibilities without them overwhelming, completely sucking the life out of you? And are you doing the right things to be able to consistently, as Ed said, as well as continue meeting those responsibilities?
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. And I know many of us are raised and the provision just means financial. I'm not all with that. Provision also means time. Provision also means listening. There are so many things, dads, we bring of value to our family and our children, and it's not just all financial.
Right. It's
Providing,
providing care,
yes,
providing
yes,
support,
all those things.
yeah,
I,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess haven't heard this word. There's intangibles
Hmm.
that you bring to the table. Yeah, so bringing all those things that are the intangibles when it comes to provision are very important. And a lot of times we get so caught up and don't think about those things, but those things are just as important as the monetary.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our final P is personal well-being. And this is how do you maintain your own health, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational? How do you maintain hobbies? How do you maintain your social life, your friendships, the things that bring you and recharge you? Yeah, I think this is an important one. In fact, sometimes I almost feel like leading with this one, but we're talking about it now because I feel that this is one of those intangibles that when you're able to do this, it allows you to do the provision and the presence much better. So I would say this is crucial. I found it to be very, very important in my journey, as well as it helps me integrate much of the other areas of life that can sometimes be stressful or challenging if I'm able to maintain this pillar quite well. So I think it's a really important one.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Drew just said. Health, hobbies, and recharging relationships. I always put it out to dads. Are you able to take 15 minutes a day and just do nothing? Just that 15 minutes can make a whole heap of difference. And also, too, if you're working, and many dads are going back to the office, that's a whole other conversation. I think we need to chat about that in a future episode. But on your way home, just decompress because when you open up that door, you don't know what you're going to get hit with. So take that time to just maintain presence, just have that quiet time so it gets your personal well-being in a good place. So let's talk about real life strategies and insights, Drew.
Yeah. So for me, the most important is prioritizing. The reality is many people, if I ask, so what are your priorities in life? Sometimes they struggle. Oh, and or they're wishy washy. They're not really sure. They kind of tell you a bunch of stuff. You're like, so it sounds like everything's your priority. Well, no, but and as a coach in particular, I find this happens quite a bit. Is that when you start to drill down and really get under the surface and challenge people, they truly don't take enough time to identify what are my true priorities. And to me, this is something that's so crucial. If you are in a relationship with a partner, you're married, you and your partner should have shared priorities that you both know are crucial and that you commit to supporting, as well as basically bringing it forward into your family and creating your life built off of your priorities. And so, to me, this is the number one strategy you need to be more effective at developing an integrated or balanced life. You must identify your true priorities, and then you must protect those priorities based on how you commit your time and where you schedule yourself. And so, there's two elements. There's actually, time management or structured, like time blocking and building out. I could show you the Excel spreadsheet that is now my 2 week calendar, right? In terms of this is how my day is structured from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. And, you know, 80 to 85% of the cells are occupied. There's only sort of, 15% that is left open because that's intentional, because it's margin. It's for the unplanned. And you have to be able to do this, and you have to be able to circulate this with your partner, with your family, so that there's an understanding. And then you have to intentionally follow through and achieve this schedule that you set out for yourself, built off of what you prioritize. And so, as an example for me, time with Kristen is a priority. Our relationship is foundational to our family. So that's built into the schedule. For us, our faith is crucial, and both not only individually but also together, spending time in spiritual practice of prayer is built into the schedule. Fitness and health is crucial. It's in the schedule. Our family time. Our family time is in the schedule. It's dedicated, allocated in the time, and it's because these are important priorities. Of course, work and other responsibilities are in there, but they're not the first thing that goes in. What goes in are our top priorities and making sure that we fit everything else in around that. And so prioritizing and building a dedicated schedule that is not just you operating on autopilot, but is you working with and integrating with people in your family to actually bring this to life, is what I think is most important, and a very practical strategy, but like ground zero for achieving this. But Ed, you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on. Share some insights.
Well, I think you've covered a lot of things there. The only thing I'd maybe add to that is prioritize without guilt, right? If you don't feel comfortable with what you're prioritizing, then it's not right. And also that wherever you prioritize, not only how does it benefit you, dad, but how does it benefit your children and your family? It's got to be bigger than you. Yes, you want to have that prior. How does that help the micro, but also the macro? So all those things you mentioned you do with Christian, not only they help you individually, but it helps at least her, and it also helps the family because it's building a stronger foundation for each one of you. Correct?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I just shared an email with my parents. I included that, not for them to be like, to be overwhelmed by it, but just say it's more for information and aware. Our goal is to try and achieve much of this. And because they're involved in sometimes taking our kids to different events and when we would need them, I feel like it's just valuable to incorporate the people who are, touching upon the family where necessary and with what information is relevant.
Excellent. So that is a wrap for the episode. Just want to say the three things that we covered today. We talked about, we set the scene. We had three pillars of balance. We also provided some real life strategies and insights. So, some things that I want to drop in, but I'm going to ask Drew first things first. What takeaway or what thing are we offering our audience?
Well, we are going to be reopening our Dad Mentor membership. And one of the foundational areas we talk about is this idea of prioritizing and helping, dads, busy dads, know how to structure their time effectively. And so I'm going to be running a free training. And so just keep an eye out for that. If we have it, we'll put a link in the show notes to the free training, where I'm going to be walking dads through the crucial steps that are needed to be effective at balancing all the demands that come at you.
Excellent. Looking forward to that event. So I'll just leave with some quick things here. I want to encourage dads, fathers, and male caregivers that balance is a journey, not a destination. And I have a question for everybody out there that's listening to this. Where do you feel the most out of balance? And what's one small change you could make this week? So You've been watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast, to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And we can never forget our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, because Dove Men Plus Care believes pet care is the best of a man. And when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. So as always, I want to say thank you for taking the most important thing, your time, to listen or watch a show. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well.